Hello. Hey, Jim. The gardener is here, so we're gonna come inside, close the door, but probably still be able to hear him. So I have this $500 Ford that's got a lot of rust, and so far all I've done is kind of clean it up and do some just basic stuff. And now today we're going to do a little more in-depth stuff. I am going to change the oil. I'm going to put in a new starter. I'm going to flush the brake system. I'm going to flush the power steering, that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm going to start by disconnecting the battery, because I'm going to get underneath this thing on my creeper, and I already have it up on jack stands. So I'm going to be underneath it on the creeper, and every time you close the door on this thing, a bunch of the body kind of falls off. So I've had to sweep to make it smooth enough where my creeper will roll easier. I guess it's a good way for it to keep getting lighter and lighter. All right, I said the first step was the disconnection of the battery, but the first step is actually to put on some safety glasses. My lift, alas, it's too small to pick up this big stupid truck. So anyway, I have put on some knee pads, which makes it a little easier on my old arthritic frame to get under here. But I'm going to take the crazy oil filter off. But first, I'm going to take out the drain plug there and drain the oil out of here. And I've got some big old catch pans here. Hopefully I don't spill too much. And there we go. Nice. Well, that went surprisingly well. I only spilled a little bit there. And when I put my filter wrench on the oil filter, which you can see in the bowl there, it was barely even finger tight. So that's, if it hasn't rusted through, that's probably why it was leaking so badly. I could have taken it off with my bare hand probably. And then the only thing it tried to do to mess with me is the little rubber gasket stayed up on the car. So if I wasn't paying attention, I could have possibly put the new one in and then had two gaskets, and that will usually cause a leak. But I noticed it and took it out. So once it's done draining the rest of the way, I'll clean all this up. I'll send this oil for recycling, and I'll put the new parts in. Next up, starter motor. Look at that oil filter. So there's a couple places, like right here, where I think it was actually leaking while it was under pressure. But it also could be that that rubber gasket had just compressed over the years. And like I said, it was so loose. So we'll have to see. But that's bad. So after disconnecting the battery, I prepared myself with a few options. I took a look at my new starter. The reason we're doing this is when I first looked at this truck, the seller warned me it might not start right away. He said that sometimes it just does a weird starter thing. And when I first tried it, after checking the oil and adding some, it actually started up no problem. But now, after a few good times, now you have to turn the key sometimes 5 or 6 times where it just goes click. And so we're going to put in a new starter. And the way this goes in there, I guess these two are on the bottom, so they're easy to get to. But then this one is on the top, so it's hard to get to. So hopefully, I've given myself a couple options here. This is on a 3/8 drive, and I'm hoping that maybe I can, once it's broken loose, I can get it out Apparently there's no swing room, so I'm hoping I'll be able to use my power ratchet here, and if not, then I have a second option, which should be about the right length with a quarter drive. That's pretty short, and that might help me out. So hopefully I've set myself up. And on these connections, one of them is a 10 millimeter and one of them is a 13, and all the rest of these mounting bolts are 13s. Let's see how this goes. Okay, there it is. Looks like it's got some sort of a heat shield, and then our connections are on the back. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the heat shield and disconnect the electrical. So I got the old starter out. I'll show you my technique in a moment. But I stood up to stretch, and I look out my door here, and an enormous bear walks right past, walking that way. Yeah, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. 87 degrees, and big old bears just sauntering through the yard. All right, what I did to get to that top bolt, because it is kind of a little tricky, I built an extension, and this is the exact end length. It is 6.5 inches long end to end, and that allowed me to sit on my creeper and roll in, and the motor's out right now, but I could look through here and I could take that extension that I had made, and I could roll into the fender well, and then I could reach behind and I could feel where the nut was. You can't see it from here, but once you feel where it is, you feed it in, you can get the socket to go, then you can see from here the whole end of your extension. So then once it's on and you're able to hold it from under here, at least I was, but expect to get dirty, because it's dirty reaching around like that. And then I was able to see the end, so then I could feed in a regular 3/8 ratchet in order to break it loose, because it was quite tight. And once I got it broken loose, there's not really much swing room in there. So then I was able to pull that out and reach up with my electric ratchet, and out she came. So it really wasn't too bad once I figured out where to look from. So now it's going to be putting the new one back in if I don't get eaten by a bear. All right, here's the setup. If you look in right through, so you see where that space is right here. There's your spring, there's the rusty shock, and then you look in through this spot and you can see my ratchet is in place and on the bolt. And if you look carefully, you actually can see the bolt from here. It's not really focusing on it right now, but if you look through that little space right there between that bolt and the exhaust, you can actually see the head of the bolt. And so it helps when you're trying to put the socket on it. But once I get that piece on my extension, then that's when I put on my ratchet. Getting it in there, reaching up and around without the ratchet on is much easier. And then I put my electric ratchet on once it started and zipped it right in. So it really wasn't that bad once I figured out there was a peephole here. The new starter is all back together. Everything's back in, heat shield's on. All hooked up, we're good to go. I just haven't hooked up the battery yet. Before I do start up, I wanted to try and do something about this power steering. I'm going to use this vacuum pump and I'm going to try to suck out as much of it as I can and refill it with some fresh stuff. And then after that, I'll cycle it a bit and then take a couple samples. And if it's really bad still, I might change it a second time. Okay, that worked out. Once I pumped it all out, I put in a little bit of fresh, stirred it around, pumped it back out, trying to get most of the little bottom dregs of the nasty stuff. That is what I pumped out, and that is what we put back in. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the brake fluid reservoir. I'm going to suck out as much of the old stuff as I can, refill it once I've rinsed it a time or two, and then go around and bleed the brakes and suck fresh fluid all through the system, clear out to the calipers. After pulling some of the fluid out, it really, it was a little bit dirty, but it really wasn't bad. So I've decided to go ahead and leave it. I filled it back up with fresh for the little bit I removed, but I don't think I need to do all the bleeding in the full flush. So let's give her a start up and make sure everything's working now. Okay. Neutral. Here we go, and we got oil pressure. Okay. My door is ajar. No, it's a door. Okay. Everything looks good. Sounds good. Excellent work. Thanks for watching.